I am Eden Phelps with Marq Environmental Charter School. This is my presentation on how weaponry has evolved since medieval times, titled In Art and History. Statistics, I have 39 hours and 33 minutes into this project. Why? I have always been interested in weaponry and decided why not. And I also may or may not have scammed my advisor by making false promises of studying defensive equipment as well. But we're going to ignore that. What are some medieval weapons? Well, some of my personal favorites and some of the most commons would have to be pole arms. These were actually traditionally the main weapon used by knights and stuff in military situations, thanks to their long reach, and they can be effectively used on horseback. They can range from basically polearm is anything with a stick and a sharp bit on the end. Anything from spears to halberds to glaives, all that good stabby pokey stuff. Pikes were actually made as a counter to cavalry, which I find personally ironic, since polearms were often used on cavalry. Next, there's axes. Oh, gotta love axes. These weren't an incredibly common weapon, but still effective. And then there's the classic sword. This was traditionally a sidearm, a weapon that was usually kept with a person in case they needed it, but they mostly used pole arms because long stabby is much more effective than short stabby. Then there's maces, which is an incredibly simple and wondrous weapon that is a stick with a bit of hard metal on the end to bash things in with. Traditionally, people's faces. Welcome to a school-friendly presentation, ladies and gentlemen. What was the most noteworthy event in weaponry evolution? Oh, this should be obvious. Gunpowder revolutionized warfare and is used in most weaponry from since it was created to onward. Some of the earliest ones were fire arrows, and then the cannons and rifles and all that. And even hand grenades were invented with it. Fun fact about gunpowder, it was actually invented by Chinese alchemists trying to make an elixir to prolong life. In an attempt to prolong life, they found one of the most effective methods of shortening it. Would we be better off with older weapons? Okay, this is an incredibly complicated topic and heavily argued topic that I am not qualified or knowledgeable enough to legitimately get in depth in. But at a surface level, a lot of the pros towards older weapons were that it was harder to kill someone, so you had to really commit to acts of violence. And a lot of the cons of older weapons was that it was harder to kill someone, so if someone was really committing to acts of violence on you, you'd have to really commit to defend yourself. And all in all, it was harder to defend yourself and harder to kill people. And with modern weapons, it's easier to defend yourself, but it's also easier to kill people. So, trade-off. Why did we evolve weapons? Well, it's likely that we realized, oh, we want to kill each other. Well, we have to defend each other from ourselves. So, better things to defend with. Granted, that means making better things to kill each other with, but it was better ways to defend ourselves. And if that sounds like a vicious cycle that is bad and honestly was kind of a stupid idea in hindsight, probably, maybe. Again, not qualified to speak on that topic. What are some positive and negatives of weaponry evolution? I went to this slightly on the last slide before the last one, but we can defend ourselves better. That's a positive. And we now have a way for physically weaker people to defend themselves against physical threats, which was a big problem. Because if there was a dude who was stronger than you and he wanted to kill you back then, you really just died. That's what happened most of the time. Now, it's not negatives are it's easier to harm someone, and now it is a way for physically weaker people to harm innocents who would otherwise be able to defend themselves. Weak dude wants to kill a strong dude, they can now. They couldn't really do that very effectively before. genre pieces. If you're new to presentations, genre pieces are little things we have to type up for our project. Basically, we had to do an informative one, an argumentative one, and a creative one. I'm a freshman, so I only had to do those three. We have to do more and more as we get older. But my informative one basically talked about all the things I've already talked about. My argumentative one was about whether or not weaponry evolution was good or not, and again, not really qualified to talk on that. My creative piece was more of a dialogue comparing modern weapons to older weapons, and the joke is older weapons were very simplistic and all really similar. Sources.
The reason the links are there is so that you can open them and show them to us.
Oh. One moment.
Thank you, Eden.
Here, can you see it yet?
Yep.
All right. As you can see, it's just a traditional research essay done informing people. It talks about various weaponry and such. And then there's also... One moment, please. This one, if it would like to load as soon as it loads, which is an argument about... again, as I said, an argument about whether or not evolving weapons was a good idea or not. And again, I'm not qualified to speak on that, so I'd rather not. And then this was my creative piece. It was a dialogue between a medieval soldier and a modern-day soldier, talking about the various weaponries. And again, the joke is that medieval weapons were simplistic, often consisting of a bit of metal, sharp or blunt, on the end of a stick. Sources. I have two websites I used, and then I had interviews with two separate live experts, people who actually knew what they're talking about and are qualified, more qualified than me on this topic. Any questions?